introduce to you Mark Segal, who is a publisher, concert promoter, political activist, and the author of his new book, And Then I Danced, Traveling the Road to LGBT Equality. How are you, Mark?
I am doing spectacular for entering Thanksgiving week, and I happen to be a big fan of Thanksgiving, mainly because one of my favorite foods in the world is turkey.
Aha!
Oh, great, great. You know, I just went on a no meat diet for about 8 weeks. I've been on no animal meat at all.
Mm-hmm.
And
That includes turkey and chicken?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it does. It does. It does.
And in fact, he's planning on getting a tofu bird.
Yeah.
Nick.
I'm going to eat tofu this Thanksgiving, but you know, it's. I was a vegetarian in my 40s and lost a lot of weight, and then went back to eating meat and gained some weight. So now I've lost in 8 weeks about 33 pounds. So.
But you also forgot the most.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it is great.
You also forgot the most important part, though.
What's that?
You drank a lot of soda too.
I drank a lot of soda. I ate a lot of the wrong stuff, a lot of sweets, all that stuff. So,
I believe in a low carb diet.
A low carb diet.
Of course, carbs are everything I love.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Bread.
Yeah, bread. You got
pasta, all the good stuff. Yeah, all the good. Oh, I'm still eating that stuff.
Especially the stuffing. That's the biggest big thing besides turkey.
I make a great apple walnut stuffing.
Is that right? Wow.
One of the many talents I've seen.
We're going to put that on the list. Listen, I read the book. I enjoyed this book, and let me tell you, it's your story, it's your memoir, and it is. And that's very, very interesting because there's a lot of history packed into this book. What I liked about it was that it is courageous. It is, from the heart, and you lay it out there. There's no punches pulled here. You are for real in this book, and to me that comes through. You're authentic in this book.
Well, I think that if you're going to do a memoir, and I mean, that's the slight difference between autobiography and memoir. A memoir is you're telling the story of your life, and you're telling what happened from your perspective. And I tried to do that. What amazes me most of all is people keep saying words that you just used. And I'd like to ask you why you used it. They say honest and courageous. Why did you use the word courageous?
Well, because I think anyone, and listen, I do radio, and I know that one of the things that you try to get a guest to do on radio, live radio, is to be authentic. It doesn't always happen, and I try to be that way, and I think the audience understands when you're not authentic, when you don't lay it out there, when you're trying to hide things. And so for me, reading this story, and there's lots of things, we've known each other for 50 plus years.
50-some years.
Yeah. So, but there's things in this book that I didn't know about you. So for you...
One of the good things is you're one of the few people that knew me in that early part, which I talk about, which is Wilson Park. And many people are shocked by that.
Mm.
Yeah. Well,
they think Jewish guy grew up in Northeast Philadelphia or Mount Airy.
No, the majority did, but Lee was not one of the lucky ones, unfortunately.
Yeah. No.
Well, that way he got to meet me. He was very lucky.
It's true. Yeah.
I was very lucky because you were the only Jewish friend I had. I think we were the two Jews in the whole project.
The only Jewish friend I had.
Yeah, I know, and that's that's why we gravitated to each other. And
but you didn't live in the project. I did.
What's this? No, I lived in the projects.
Did you live outside the projects?
Well, I did. I moved outside the projects, but I lived on Bailey Bailey Terrace for.
Really? That was.
Yeah.
You met after that, or?
No, we met while I lived in Wilson Park. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Then there's a mistake in the book then, because I say we're the only Jewish family.
No, I read that. I was going to correct you on that, but that's okay. Yeah, no.
I accept corrections.
No, that's all right. No, listen. No.
If there's a third edition, I'm told I get to make changes. I will add that change in there.
Hey, I know there's going to be a third edition because this book is great, and we're gonna promote the heck out of it. So there's definitely going to be a third edition. And no, we met while I went to Poe Elementary with you, and you talk about Poe Elementary in there, and when you're writing about Wilson Park, I have to tell you, I had these flashbacks and you say something in the book about poverty and about being poor, growing up poor, which I understand, so but it was so well put. You say something to the effect that politicians just don't get it. Most politicians don't get poverty. What do you mean by that? I mean, what did you mean by that?
I think most politicians have catchphrases for poverty. Many politicians that I know really just don't get it because they haven't lived it. And to me, and obviously you, it's a burning issue. And today I find myself speaking very strongly about changing the education system and how it's the most important thing we can do, because if we change the education system, we're going to grow kids who are going to be smart enough to get into schools or jobs where they will get out of the poverty system. And the way you do that is to spend money. I know, big government, people hate to hear, but it's true. We need to have a place where kids come and not feel like they have to go to, but that they want to go to, that's a safe haven, that's a fun place to go, and even a place to feed some.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you on this.
And that's probably real far out there, but I honestly believe that. And the reason I believe that is not only because of my own circumstances, but I see people who are growing up a lot more disadvantaged than I was. I mean, we always had food on the table. Maybe it wasn't the greatest food, maybe it was little, but we always had food on the table. I see people growing up, kids today who go to school with no food.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
How do you expect them to sit there and learn, and then they're in a schoolroom with no books, no pencils, scared of the other students? I mean, we really have to change the whole concept of education.
I have to tell you this story. One of my committee people actually lives in Wilson Park Project, and so I went to visit her one day and knocked on the door, and she invited me in, and was sitting there. And she lives in the same house that I lived in the projects. So it was sitting there in the house. It was, to me. Incredible, because all these memories came flooding back into my brain, and it was almost like being in a dream state, where.
No, I understand where you're coming from, because at the end of throughout the book when I was writing it, I kept interchanging the name of my street, which was I kept saying Banbury, and then sometimes I would say Banbray.
Right.
My publisher wrote back to me and said, we're doing a final edit here. Which is it? And I really couldn't remember. So I took a drive down there myself and actually looked at my old house. I looked at the front. Then of course, I had the flashbacks like you. Mm-hmm. Then I went around to the back where the yard was. And there's a picture of me in the book standing in that yard. And sitting in the yard was, I guess, a family, a woman, a guy. They were just, getting out of the hot house in the summer and sitting in the yard. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Hi, how you doing?" And they said, "Fine." And I said, "I used to live here." And they just looked at me and nodded. They had no interest whatsoever.
Wow.
But it really cemented for me the isolation that that place was. I mean, I saw the hill where the expressway hill where I used to
Yep.
sled down in the winter. I saw the expressway, which is kept us in on one side, the railroad tracks on the other.
Yeah, you talk about that in the book, and that gave me a flashback because I remember playing on those hills by the expressway, and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, so the whole point of the book is basically, and there are many points to the book, but the book starts out with, obviously, we're in poverty, I think I'm a person that has no life ahead of them, basically. And the title of the book, And Then I Danced, comes from the fact that the President of the United States invited me to dance at the White House. Now, coming from the projects and dancing at the White House should tell everybody when they see where I or we came from that there's hope in the world, that no matter what circumstances you come from, you can get out of those and do something that changes the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think this is courageous, and it's also very, very inspirational. I talk a lot, and I research and look at stories of resilience, and why does one person under these same circumstances, they turn to drugs or they turn to negative influences, and a person like you finds a way out, finds a way to uplift themselves.
Well, so did you. We learned to fight.
Yeah.
In our own way, not physically fight,
right,
but fight the system.
Which is hard to do. Philadelphia, I was just reading an article, Philadelphia, 26% poverty in the city of Philadelphia, our city.
Of all the big cities in America, we have the highest rating.
Absolutely.
Oh, geez.
So not everyone.
And I'm hoping Jim Kenney will change that.
I'm hoping that. Yeah, I have great hope
I have great
for
faith
him.
in Jimmy. I really do.
I do too. I do too. So I think the fact that we're getting a new mayor and one that understands poverty, understands the system. He's been working in city council for a long time.
I know I'm leaving you out, but I really got to ask this question of Lee, so I hope you don't mind.
Okay, that's fine.
This is the only interview that I will ever do on this book, ever, where the person who's interviewing me actually knew a good deal of the characters in the book. But you are the only one that's going to ever interview me on a radio or TV who knew my parents.
That's right.
That's right. Wow.
Yeah, and I actually, reading those chapters about your parents, I actually sat there and teared up because I do remember them, and nice people, really nice people. Your mother was nicer than your dad, but I understand, as a kid, not understanding why that was so. I understand being an adult now why, with...
and so do I. I didn't understand then either. And as life went on and things got better for us, he changed. From being the man who constantly had to fight to put bread on the table.
Sure.
And he did. He really did. Which is stressful. To being the guy who got to see his son be successful. And to him, that was all he really wanted, was to know that his children were successful, so that he felt like, as all parents, they did a decent job.
But your question...
That's the best gift I could have given him.
But I'm sorry, you said you had a question about that for me, or... Well,
did I describe my parents well?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, because the pictures in my head came back. Both of your parents were. I remember them as hardworking people. I remember them. I remember your mother as a really caring person, and someone that was.
She did bunker.
Yeah, Edith Bunker's was a good description. It really was. But a very kind-hearted person, and that's what I remember about them. Absolutely.
Thank you. I mean, that's you. You said earlier that I wrote a very real book, And the way you tell that is by the people who knew the people and how I wrote it, if they agree with, my depiction. But I think it was really important I think most people don't give their parents and the influences in their life the credit they deserve. And for me, my grandmother, mother, and father were probably the most influential people who made me who I am today.
Yeah, I didn't know that about your grandmother, and that was an insight that I gained. I don't believe I ever met your grandmother, but she sounds like a really interesting character. She really does.
She is, she taught me about resilience.
Yeah.
Here's a woman, as a little girl, her village was burned in Russia through the pogroms when the Russians discriminated against Jewish villages. Her family escaped, came to the United States. She grew up, realized that women didn't have certain rights, joined the suffragette movement, and then when I was a young kid, she joined the civil rights movement. And when I was 13, she took me to my first civil rights demonstration, where at 13 years old, I got to meet Robert N.C. Nix and Cecil Moore, both of which would play a part in my later life.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think you were right that I didn't grow up my whole childhood in Wilson Park. I lived there for about 3 years, and then we moved to on the other side of Broad Street, on the east side, as we call it, on the 2600 block of Sheridan Street, and I thought I was really going from poverty into an oasis, and what I found was I went from poverty into poverty again. So, it was a little better situation, but not that much better. There were some Jewish people on the block, but mostly it was an Italian, Irish type element in the area. And I had to, as you did, we faced discrimination.
Oh my God, yes.
Every day. So, I remember people used to, call us Christ killers, and and these were adults, and the kids would call you worse things, so, yeah.
I used to be scared to death of priests.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Because they would always snare at you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that's really strange to say that, and if there's Catholic viewers, sorry, folks, but when we were young, we were the devils. Jewish people were devils to people who were Catholic. Mm-hmm. It took until John Paul the 23rd to change all that.
Well, interesting. In 1970, I was in the military. I was in the Army, and I was doing KP duty, which is kitchen patrol. And one of the cooks there, who was a sergeant, came to me. He found out I was Jewish, and I guess you can't hide it with a name like Schwartz, right? So, he said to me, "I'm just curious. You're Jewish. Can you show me your horns?" And this guy was.
Oh my God! I read about that in the book.
Yeah, he was not kidding. So when I read that in your book, yeah, you're right. I said, wow, and to me it was interesting because this was not, it was not the 1950s, the time that we grew up in, or 60s. This was 1970, 71. So, but I think we've come a long way since those times.
Oh, we have on all the issues, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
And I make the point clear in the book. Today, gay people have marriage equality everywhere in the nation, all 50 states. But you can get married today, and in most of the United States, you could be fired for getting married because there's no non-discrimination laws.
What, is that right? Wow.
Absolutely. Pennsylvania does not have a non-discrimination law. And New Jersey does, thank God.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thought Pennsylvania did, but you're setting me straight on that.
No, as Jim Carville, and there's a great Jim Carville story in the book.
Yeah.
The great political consultant who gets credit for electing Bill Clinton once said about Pennsylvania, you have Philadelphia on one side, you have Pittsburgh on the other, and in the middle you have Alabama.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's saying a sad thing about Alabama.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
We're talking today to Mark Segal, my friend for over 50 years, and about his new book, And Then I Danced, Traveling the Road to LGBT Equality. And it's a real delight to have him on the show. It's surreal for me, Mark, because I don't usually interview friends. I really don't. You know, I've interviewed thousands of people during my radio career.
But whoever thought we would both be in this position?
You know, yeah.
That's delightful.
Well,
Absolutely delightful.
Let me ask you this question, because it's really the payoff question, and that is, you know, did you ever think that, you know, from where you live, that you would ever be, you know, writing a book on radio and TV and doing all the things that you've done?
Absolutely no idea. In fact, the first line in the book is, I was an outsider from the very beginning. And then I just start talking about all the ways, you know, I suffered discrimination, poverty, being gay, being Jewish, blah, blah, blah. And I go on and on and on. Up until the point where I'm 18 and I'm standing outside the Stonewall Inn when they have the infamous riots. And all of a sudden, I realized that everything that I learned up to that point was meant for something. And what it was meant for was to fight for LGBT rights. And I stood there. I had no job. I just moved to New York, no real place to live except for the YMCA, $6 room a night. I had no dreams for the future, no prospects. I thought, you know, I'd be poor my whole life and amount to nothing. And I thought, okay, I'm going to fight for LGBT rights, even though, you know, it doesn't pay a salary. I'll work doing something or other on the side. But this is really important. In 1969, women were fighting for their rights. Blacks were fighting for their rights. Latinos were fighting for their rights. Why shouldn't LGBT people be doing the same thing? And so standing there thinking, okay, I'll be poor the rest of my life, but at least I'll be doing something good. Never did I think I would make a living at it. Never did I think that I would be breaking the kind of barriers I've broken. And when I read the book, and I got to tell you, I was so busy moving forward from project to project to project that I literally have never looked back on my life. And
Hello.
And I'll tell you, my life is almost as much of a surprise to me as it is to some of the readers.
I believe that.
I can believe that, because, you know, sometimes when I look back on my life, it is, you know, it is like being in a dream state sometimes, because you don't believe that this has actually happened. You know, and one of the things in the book that and the reason I say it's courageous, you know, because, and what you've done is courageous, because, you know, as a teenager, you leave home to go to New York City, which to me is scary in any event, you know. But to do it without any money and any, you know, connections, any support system, is just amazing to me.
Well, I felt like I didn't have anything, so I had nothing to lose. But yeah, I must admit, I was scared. I was nervous. Didn't know where I was going. Didn't know what I was going to do. I just had a feeling that I would find my way somehow. The way I found was not the way I expected. There really was no road sign saying this is where you go, because when I decided to become a gay activist, there really wasn't a word for it or a title, and there was definitely no salary involved. Mm-hmm. The first 10 years I did it, I was basically in poverty. But I didn't care, because I was doing something that I cared about. And it was an exciting roller coaster of a ride. And it taught me how to be a leader. It taught me how to work with others. And it taught me a good deal about the system. And then I'm lucky enough that I've been able to make a lot of friends along the way, even people that you would think would not want to befriend me. And I like that aspect of what I do. I like when I'm able to befriend somebody who I've disrupted on TV, like Walter Cronkite, or befriend somebody like Bob Brady, who was Sergeant at Arms City Council. And when I disrupted it. He had to literally, physically carry me out.
Yeah, yeah.
Congressman. I like the fact that I've befriended people like John Street, who was considered the city's most homophobic person, and when he became mayor, he fought for marriage equality. Those are the things I like because I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, which is educating people on the issues of who gay people are.
Well, that's also a lesson in this book, and I don't know how you do it, but you know, if you study politics and you're interested in politics, one of the lessons that you have in the book is you know, turning the people around, you know, making them a friend. And people that were enemies or not sure, sitting on the fence, you turn them around and make them your friends. And in politics, you know, there's a long list of politicians that have enemies lists, and they very rarely turn people into friends. You know, once you're on their list, you're on their list, and it's not a very good list to be on, you know. So
one of the things that I've learned about myself in the book, I mean, anybody who's involved in politics or community struggles, we all have friends, we all have people who don't like our methods or what we do or us personally. And I've realized that the people I work with are very special people. And the people I don't work with are insignificant because they're not the kind of people who really want to work with other people. So, I mean, there's an old line, you know, play nice together.
yes,
I think that I have a great group of people that I play nice together with. And that includes politicians, media people, because we appreciate each other. And we could agree to disagree with respect. And I think that's really important. People, right now you're seeing the Congress of the United States totally in chaos because the people there can't agree to disagree with respect. They have to attack each other. And that, I mean, and it's very sad. And until that solves itself, we're in a standstill government.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with President Obama. We have the Republican Party at war with itself. And they control both houses of Congress. So they first have to learn to work with each other. Once they work with each other, maybe then they can work with the Democrats. But you can't blame President Obama for their war. That is their war.
Exactly.
very, very good. Yeah, 100% in agreement with you on this. And one of the things in the book that you talk about and came back to me again when you were working as a door-to-door salesperson, you know, and I worked with you for a short time doing that. I don't know.
For Milne?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we went around.
Were you amazed that I remembered the name of the company?
Yeah, no, I didn't remember that, you know. I remember doing it. I remember freezing in the bitter cold walking down streets. But even Brian doesn't know this story.
No, I don't think I do.
No. So one night we're you know, each of us had a side of the street to get
exactly.
to. I did my side, and I was looking for Mark, and I couldn't find him, and I didn't know what happened. So I go on the other side of the street, and I'm knocking on the doors. Did you see Mark? I thought he was kidnapped or something.
Yeah.
And he's in somebody's house having dinner and watching TV. Yeah. I don't know if you remember that or not, but that's the way.
That sounds like something I would pull.
Yeah. But only Mark could do that.
Sorry for me.
Yeah, they felt sorry, so they invited him in to have dinner. You know, so
I guess that we should have told both of us that I had this ability to work with people at that point. But who knew?
Yeah, well, I always say that, you know, if you can do door-to-door sales, you can do anything, and I really believe that. Yeah, I really believe that.
Did they buy anything?
Did they? Yeah, I don't know.
They were selling subscriptions to the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Yep. And the pitch was.
And I still remember the actual speech that you gave. We each gave the same speech.
Yep, absolutely.
Hi, I'm a student, and I'm trying to win a science trip to Cape Kennedy to further my education. Go buy a subscription to the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'll get points, and that might help me go. So would you please help me?
And you couldn't turn down. You couldn't
turn
do
down,
that. You know, a kid selling newspaper subscriptions to go to
Then
Cape.
you got to push the daily and the Sunday.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Because I think you got more points for the Sundays. It wasn't that.
Nobody else is going to have this discussion with me.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
No other TV or radio show will do this.
No, only.
You got an exclusive on this one.
That's
I
right.
have no idea if your listeners are caring at all about it.
Well, I think so, because I think it shows a different side. So I think
Plus,
so.
also, I think you're giving our listeners ideas on how to make money.
Yeah, that's right. But and another early story I'll tell you is that we used to go out, and I don't know if you remember this. This is not in the book, but we used to go out on Friday nights and Saturday and haul people's packages to their car at the Penn Fruit supermarket.
Oh my God! Yes, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, you remember that? So
and you get a quarter or 50 cents a bag.
That's right. That's right. And sometimes even 35 cents, or 50 cents, and you felt like a millionaire, when that happened. But yeah, I mean, and I think that all goes back to, we're talking about poverty. I think it all goes back to even as a child trying to get out of that, trying to do something to in desperation. Yeah, to better yourself,
Hustle 7 days a week.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that sticks with you. I think part of the problem, and I certainly don't want to blame people in poverty, but certainly, part of the problem is that
especially nowadays,
there's some people just don't take the initiative to try to better themselves, and I see that.
And there's also people, there's an interesting aspect to this. I just forgot the part about Penn Fruit, but absolutely, as you mentioned it, the images of it come back to me so clearly. I also remember selling greeting cards for a company by the name of George Creed and other little things that I did during that period of time.
Oh, yes.
But while we can laugh about that now, as we've been doing for the last half hour or so,
yep.
I know other people who went through that period who are just, and had a hard time growing up and making money, but they're so bitter about it. And I don't, if you've made it out of that, you should be happy and joyous.
Oh, yeah.
And be celebrating.
Absolutely. But you say in the book that, there's always a piece of you that you don't want to wind up back in that situation hauling packages at the Penn Fruit.
And you know what? I don't think I'm ever going to lose that little voice in the back of my head that says it could all disappear tomorrow. For whatever reason, I guess it's because I don't believe where I am today. That might be it. I don't know if you've got a psychiatrist out there, try to explain it to me, because I really can't. But, I think of myself as one of the happiest and luckiest people around. I'm amazed at where I am today, somewhere I never expected. And I love to say when I go out and speak to a group that I can now say to you that I am a happily, legally married man after 11 years of living in sin.
To a really nice guy. I spoke to Jason at the book launch, and one of the things I said to him was, Mark was always this way, as far as I remember. I was a shy kid, and he was always this guy that was outgoing and would say, let's go and do this, that he really made you believe that you could do it, even though in the back of my head, I was shy, I was reserved. I really didn't feel that I could, but if this guy thinks I can do this, then I can do it, so.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I really do appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. It's what I feel, and but you've always been this way. I remember in the 1960, JFK was coming to Philadelphia, and we were trying to find the route that he was going to travel because we wanted to see
oh my God,
a president.
I remember that.
Yeah, exactly.
Come up the expressway.
Yeah. So we were looking for, and we never found it, but we were looking for his motorcade, so.
And it never came.
Never came. But, we would do things like this, but I don't think kids, at the age of 9, 10 years old were doing at the time,
No.
They weren't interested in politics or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we were extraordinary for our age to be, when I look back
I think so. I think so, and I think that that desire to better yourself, to get out of poverty, I think had a lot to do with it. And I think all of that is you tell very, very well in the book. You also talk about your grandmother, and I remember this. You had this. Fascination with Auntie Mame, the movie Auntie Mame.
Absolutely.
And you talk about that in the book, which brought me back, because I remember going to see that with you, Auntie Mame, and it's one of my favorite movies as well. I really enjoy that movie. So
the character reminds me, and now I put the pieces together, of course, years later, of my grandmother, Fanny
Yes.
Weinstein, the woman I told you about, the suffragette, the woman who fought anti-Semitism, who took me to my first civil rights demonstration. She, in a sense, was my Annie Mame. And Annie Mame, the book is about an eccentric aunt who all of a sudden gets her 8-year-old nephew to raise totally unexpectedly. And she's this wild New York eccentric lady who's up on everything liberal, and just takes him from one crazy situation to the next crazy situation. And my grandmother did that with me to some extent. But luckily for me, if there's anybody out there who knows the story or read the book, saw the main musical, it's based on a real life character.
yes.
And she lived in New York, and when I got to New York, I went searching for her, and I found her. Her name is was Mary Ann Tanner, and there's part of the book that tells that story, how I found her and what happened when I found her.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember that in the book, and it is an incredible story. I'm not going to ask you to tell that because I want people to read the book. So,
but I got to ask this obvious question: did you see the movie at the Old Colonial?
No, not at the Old Colonial, at the Broadway, I believe, or the President.
That's Broadway.
Yeah, Broadway, I think. Yeah, you're
That's
right.
Love that theater. Although we were to the Colonial, but Colonial usually showed smaller films.
Yes,
But
that's right.
Annie Mame was a very big film, meaning it got big houses.
That's true. Yeah.
We used to go see the King and I as well. That was another really good film that we used
My
to
mother's favorite musical.
Is it really? I didn't know that, but I remember you and I seeing that, and that always was one of my favorites. And I have to tell you the story. I went to see years later a production of it with Yul Brynner at the Valley Forge Music Theater, and that was in the Round, and I had
Yeah, I remember it well.
Yeah,
Frank Ford owned that.
Yeah, and I had an end seat, and the greatest thrill in my life was to have Yul Brynner come down the aisle and stop next to me, and I look up, and it's Yul Brynner, and I said, life does not get any better than this. That, because, the idol that I saw in The King and I on the screen, and would never think that I would be able to meet Yul Brynner, and
Even though you didn't say anything, of course.
No, of course not, because he was performing, but but he was there, he was standing next to me.
There's a line in show business which says that someone owns that role, and that role of The King and I will always be owned by Yul Brynner.
Absolutely.
He's the epitome of that king. And recently, actually right now, there is a new production of The King and I, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's at Lincoln Center in New York. And Lee, if you love that show, if it's your favorite show,
it is. Yeah,
absolutely must go up there and see this. It's a spectacular production. But the point being is that when I saw it, the show was absolutely spectacular. I give it an A+. But the king in that King and I was not Yul Brynner.
No, that's right. I've seen other productions of the show, and it doesn't come close to Yul Brynner. But I don't think anyone can, because you're right. He owns that part. Absolutely. I had the pleasure and the privilege to be at your book launch in Philadelphia, and one of the things that I just stood there awestruck, because the people that were there, I mean the politicians and people that are well known, and it struck me that they're politicians and they're doing the political thing, but I really, what came across to me was that these are people that really like Mark Segal. They really like you. So, and that's something. That's saying something in the world of politics.
Well, luckily for me, I've worked with a lot of them for 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Ed Rendell is someone I've worked with. David Cohen is someone I've worked with for all those years. Jim Kenny, he was someone I helped get on the city council. And he's a close personal friend. These are family to me.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Absolutely, and that showed through through the speeches and it's very well deserved. So, but not everyone in politics gets that.
Exactly.
They don't get that, and
I think the reason because is they have that enemy list about 10 miles long.
Well, yeah, and I think it goes to what you've been able to do, and that is to if someone disagrees with you, you don't make them an enemy, and you try to change their thinking. You try to win, as they say, the hearts and minds of people, and you've been successful in doing that.
That might take many years, but
yeah, sure.
We're going to be around for many years.
Yeah.
The effort.
Absolutely. We're coming almost to the top of the hour, and so I could go on forever. You did this job for a while. You were a radio host, which was a surprise to me. I didn't know that until I read the book. Do you miss radio at all?
Yeah, I do. It was difficult to get in every single week and to keep that schedule, and I did a 2-hour show, but I really enjoyed, like everything I've done, I enjoyed the challenge of learning it. If you go in and think that you know it all, you're definitely doomed to fail. I knew I didn't, and I had a lot of great people who helped me learn how to be a radio personality to some extent, and that was enjoyable. And if I brought some excitement or fun or learning to my audience, that was great. It was a call-in show, so we were able to judge how well we were doing by the amount of calls we got. Mm-hmm. And we got to start to get regulars, and it was just absolutely enjoyable.
That's well. You're welcome to come back here anytime, and
we'll do it again.
Yeah, I would love to have you come back and just talk about anything, politics or sports or anything you want to talk about.
Well, I promise you, there will be issues up, and when there's an issue you feel you want to discuss on your show, give me a call, email me, and we'll do it.
That sounds great.
Sounds good.
That sounds great. Now, what's next for you? You're out promoting the book, obviously, but what's your next project?
That goes through the end of the year, a little into January. Then I start planning for the 40th anniversary for my newspaper, Philadelphia Gazette.
Wow.
Will be in the spring.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible.
You bet.
Maybe next summer I'll get off.
You never know.
I didn't even ask you. You went just by happenstance, and this is in the book. I'm not going to get into it too much, but just by happenstance, you become a newspaper publisher. Where did the idea for that come up? Why did you think you could become a newspaper publisher?
Well, I didn't actually. I mean, the only experience I had was so limited to us selling newspapers subscriptions when we were kids.
Yeah.
And I helped put out for the first gay youth organization I founded in 1989. That was it. And like everything else in life, things just seemed to enter it from nowhere. I was out, I had become the most famous gay actress in the nation in 1973 because of all these disruptions I was doing. And a friend, personal tour, Pittsburgh, as we were talking one night, he said to me, "Why don't you do a?" I said, "I'll work with you on it. I'll be your partner." And lo and behold, we created Philadelphia Gay News.
That's great. That is great. Incredible story.
Marvelous.
You know, we've only scratched the surface of what's in the book. We haven't even talked about 1/3 of everything that's in the book. So what I'm asking my listeners to do is to go out, buy a copy for yourself, and then buy a copy for someone else. It makes a great gift.
I appreciate it. They can get it at Barnes & Noble. They can get it at Amazon.com. It's out there.